Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Omega. A little about them. They were founded back in 1848. They are Swiss-made and part of the Swatch Group's luxury tier, although Omega and Tissot merging was actually a precursor to what eventually would become known as the Swatch Group. So I'd say their history is a touch purer than, some of the other brands within the group that were technically saved during that time, right? So Omega was actually part of the parts that were doing the rescuing, not being rescued or revived. Now, in terms of type of watch, this is clearly a dive watch. Some key characteristics and design what you're looking for a diver. Of course, you're going to find water resistance, typically paired to some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. Now, this is a Seamaster Diver 300 meters, and since 1993, the Seamaster Diver 300M has really enjoyed a legendary following. Today's modern collection has embraced that famous ocean heritage and updated it with Omega's most advanced innovation and designs. This 42mm model is crafted in stainless steel and includes a black anodized aluminum bezel ring and a diving scale in white super luminova. Also, the dial is also using that similar black aluminum with a laser engraved wave pattern. So the nice tight wave pattern on here. So it really has moved away from some of the glossier years where we were seeing like a lot of ceramic. And I think some people still might have preferred ceramic for the bezel insert, but honestly more and more brands are getting away with doing these in aluminum these days, thanks to brands like Tudor really repopularizing the use case. And honestly, with the modern finishes and everything that you can choose today, it's kind of hard to argue with it, especially when it looks this good and you can make it really match the dial. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, some of you probably noticed that this isn't on the provided OEM strap. This is on an Anchor strap, really cool Anchor Flex Pro strap. And there's a reason for that, specifically because this is the personal watch of the founder of Anchor Strap Company, and he lent this to me, to the channel for me to do this video, which I appreciate. So very cool watch. I wanted to get my hands on, haven't had a chance to. I've handled, various similar types of Seamasters in terms of modern ones, and then of course I do have my Neo Vintage example, that my electric blue, that I enjoy very, very much as well. Fitting, I think, though, that it's on the strap, because I love the way that they have the tighter wave pattern texturing back. So the fact that it ties in really nicely to the texturing on this strap, I think is very nice, and has a really beautiful OEM-like flow, while still feeling like, hey, I went the extra mile because, hey, I personalized this, right? It's like a good set of wheels on your car. It's nice to just give you that little extra taste of personality. Now, in terms of the dimensions here, guys, 42 millimeters in diameter, 13.7 millimeters thick, and 49 millimeters lug to lug. Also, it's brushed stainless steel with some nice high polished accents. The brushing on Omega is always very, very impressive. Guys, look at how tight that brushing pattern is. Really nice, beautiful hairline brush there. And I think it's something that goes undersold. Of course, I love a good Zaratsu polish. Let me give this a quick wipe. In terms of polishing, you always kind of hear that being really accentuated. But at the end of the day, there's actually a lot to be said about impressive brushing as well, because most of the case is brushed here, and it is brushed to a very, very high, noticeably high level. Now, in terms of the sapphire, it is a double domed sapphire in that kind of box style, which doesn't actually add too much thickness if you take a look at it here at angle. It does have an inner anti-reflective coating. Also, it does have a 120 click bezel, which obviously Seamasters are known for this wave pattern here that even extends to the bezel grip. It's not the grippiest, but once you find your spot, you can definitely get it going. But again, that tactile engagement with it is not for everyone. I've seen some people really, this rub them the wrong way, while others might really enjoy it, or at the very least, like me, find it, I think quite tolerable, which is tough to say for a watch that, technically can cost close to $7,000. Yeah, it's a great watch here. For all intents and purposes, but let me just tell you my own personal thoughts on it, apart from the fact that, it feels good to wear an Omega watch, because of the brand cachet that comes along with that. Some would say it's a bargain, for the brand cachet that comes with it. And some would say, hey, with an aluminum insert, aluminum dial, and this level of thickness, it's, that's a little pricey, maybe people are feeling, I know, I should say maybe, tons of people are very, very value oriented. I mean, people are arguing the value of a Seiko watch, let alone an Omega. So I know that, in terms of the audience there, you can really land on one or the other side of the fence, and it can be at extreme angles there, and it's okay. I think from a watch collector's perspective, this is an outstanding piece to collect. In terms of value proposition, that is something that's more malleable depending on what your own particular preferences are. Now, you have the screw down crown at 3 o'clock, as well as this 10 o'clock crown, which is going to be your manual helium escape valve. And then the movement inside, of course, it's tough to see here. And there are other channels that let me give it a quick wipe, that, really specialize in getting into the macro shots of the movements. There are better channels for that, and probably better movements for this as well. It is a handsome movement, don't get me wrong, but, it's honestly, I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword. Omega movements don't look like anything else. They really have their own look. So if you like that look, cool. If you don't, and you like traditional perlage and stuff like that, you might not love this, because there's not a lot of perlage or blued screws. So yeah, it's a bit of a departure, but that's also kind of part of its charm, is that, they dare to be different. And especially, I'm just going to give it a couple of quick wipes here, especially with its own signature design. And again, this is something that Omega developed. They created this aesthetic, and they've refined it over the years, gone through different phases, and it's in a very, very nice place right now, in a bit of a sweet spot, combining old and new. So this is kind of the resting point, I think, before they launch off into something drastically different, like you've seen with the Planet Ocean. So this is probably going to be the aesthetic that we ride into until they make a real change, and a shift away in terms of maybe either going more retro or going more modern. Because right now it's kind of right there in the middle. Now, in terms of the movement inside, we saw it, but it's the Omega Automatic 8806, which is a master chronometer, which means that it is accurate from 0 to plus 6 seconds per day, which is Metis certified. It does have a 55-hour power reserve, which isn't industry leading by any means, but still over 2 full days, which is great. And again, power reserve isn't for everybody. We've kind of noticed that, because not everybody cares that, people have 3 days, 5 days, whatever it might be across the dial. Now, when it comes to the beat rate, I feel like this is a little undermentioned when it comes to reviewing Omega watches. These beat at 3.5 hertz, so they're not a full 4 hertz sweep that you would normally be accustomed to for a traditional Swiss movement. This is beating slightly slower, not much slower in terms of what's noticeable, but typically, a lot of brands have been slowing down those beat rates to about 3 hertz and extending out the power reserve quite a bit, over 3 days. So for this to be slightly slower and still kind of have a more mediocre power reserve at the price point, it's a thing. And if it wasn't Omega doing this, you guys would be complaining. All right. But do I think that the Omega logo and kind of the badge marketing are enough to carry it through? Absolutely. Not for everybody though, right? Not for everyone. So this is going to be at 3 hertz, which is going to be 25,200 vibrations per hour versus the 28.8 that you would normally get. It is also anti-magnetic to 15,000 Gauss, which is great, especially considering that it does have a display case back. The dial is also black aluminum with a laser engraved wave pattern, which again, I really like that they returned to this tighter wave application. You do have also applied indices that are, obviously done to a very, very high level. Very nice. They're very bold and still quite refined. You're also going to get two-tone Lume, which is a nice little surprise from now and again, which is you're going to have the green bezel pip and minutes hand, and then it's going to be blue Lume everywhere else. Of course, Seamaster 300, 30 bar or 300 meters or 1,000 feet of water resistance, 20 millimeter lug width here. And then in terms of the bracelet, I believe this originally came on a mesh bracelet, but it is featured on this Anchor Strap Co. Anchor Flex Pro Strap, $99 out the door for one of these. Or if you already have one or, one of their products and you have the existing clasp here, you can get it for $54 without the clasp. So you could get this, and then, you could buy potentially other color strap options, orange, reds, all the good stuff. Check the links in the description for more on that. But let's go ahead, get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, or 19 centimeters in circumference, it's a full size wear. It's a very traditional 42 millimeter watch. It wears full size, and some might even consider it wearing a bit large, which, funnily enough, I've been doing these reviews long enough to now where we've gone from larger to smaller back to larger preferences. Again, you're seeing more and more watch companies starting to create upper sized models now that really don't specialize in oversized watches. So I think that's interesting. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the lens here, you're gonna notice a lot of perspective distortion, which is gonna make the watch seem a lot larger. It's gonna make my wrist seem a lot smaller because now the sides of my wrist are falling away. And again, it's just distorted. And that's why some of the photos and with smaller watches are always going to look better on Instagram because, not everyone's as deliberate with their wrist shots. So what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And again, I think this is nice. Honestly, although my wrist is on the larger side of average at 7.5 inches, I will say it is quite a tall and round wrist, so it's not like it's super wide, flat, and accommodating. So I am very cognizant of things like lug to lug, as well as, of course, the overall proportions and design. You can see here that it does have a relatively flat case, although those lugs do flare down slightly at the ends. This is a flat wearing case, and it is still on the thicker side. I wouldn't call it thick. I wouldn't call it thin. But yeah, it's on the thicker side of medium range there. So especially if you are accustomed to, some of the more neo-vintage, late 90s, early 2000s Seamasters, you're going to be very fond of those models. Probably some of the nostalgia goes back to the thinness of those models. While it captures the aesthetic, the wear profile definitely feels more modern, more robust, which is something that could be a selling point for somebody and, a deal breaker for somebody else. But let me know what you think down in the comments. So obviously still very handsomely done, excellently executed there. So it's not, of course, yes, you can get some crazy clone watch out there from AliExpress, not to say a clone of this watch, but just a factory branded watch that's just a straight homage, right? With maybe some badge design work there. That's going to have better specs in terms of the use of aluminum, right? You can put that, you can get an enamel dial, you can get a bezel insert that's ceramic, you can get time mask, you get all the meteorite like dials. It's just a lot of crazy options now that manufacturing wise you can do that might be upper in spec, but again, the execution is there too, right? The fit and finish, this is executed to a very high level. So even though it's aluminum, which isn't as preferable, don't forget guys, aluminum is also in like aircraft. Like aluminum is not just like in tin cans. So it has a lot of other uses at much higher grades, to include luxury wristwatches. So keep that in mind. I do think this flows perfectly on this Anchor Strapco Anchor Flex Pro strap. Again, I love the use of that texturing there to really tie everything together. The matted texture just plays with the light really well as the dial and even the bezel insert in terms of the way that it's going to reflect the light. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Oh, yes. Outstanding Lume, fully Lume bezel insert. If I didn't mention that earlier, I did mention the Lume pip. They're having that green tone. This is really impressive. I do like this. So even though you are getting the trade-off, of course, of that aluminum bezel insert, the execution that they're able to really do this at is still quite impressive, even if you're not a fan of aluminum. Although I'll say this aluminum won't have the same charm as the older aluminums that you could, get a ghosted bezel on because of the, because of how wearable they could tarnish and patina and wear away. Here, this bezel insert is going to be very, very strong, and it's going to look like this. It's going to keep looking like this for a very, very long time. Now, one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. As you guys can see here, guys, although it has that monochromatic look when in the daylight, there's a lot of action that comes here, and the waves, whether it be on the dial, on that bezel grip, or those lyre style lugs on that signature case. There's just a lot of movement, a lot of flow, and that's one of the things that I think really endures about this piece. And yes, I do miss the sword hands, these skeletonized hands. They're not the best for me, but they don't bother me. For me, they're not a deal breaker. This is a fantastic watch, and if I had, the budget for one, I can't say that I wouldn't choose this. But I'm personally not shopping within that price range for a dive watch. I have divers that I enjoy quite a bit. That would probably, I shouldn't say probably, would get more rest time for less. So I wouldn't want to put myself in that position where I was just purchasing something, for the collector's box, without some level of sentimental value around it. Just because it's a great product doesn't mean that I need to collect it or own it. I can still appreciate it from afar, and I don't have to hate on it either just because I don't have it. Like, I don't need to say this is a bad watch just because I don't plan to buy it, because I'm not probably the target demographic for something like this. Ooh, man, this thing looks good. But we'll get the lights back on here into some closing thoughts. So on the wrist, it wears like a true to size 42 millimeter. It also feels slimmer than probably that 13.7 millimeter thickness would imply, which isn't, again, it's kind of on the larger side of medium there. But the thicker case back that comes out in terms of the protrusion, the flatter mid-case profile, it does make this a bit more susceptible to feeling slightly top-heavy, even with this thin of a pass-through strap sliding between the case and your wrist. So if you want something that really wears close to your wrist, low riding, and you want a pass-through strap, this might not be the one for you just because of the case architecture. But I think it works. It's not an issue for me, but I do know some folks that really love that kind of low slung style. I would recommend probably the OEM bracelets, options for that, because then there's nothing passing through underneath, or of course a two-piece strap option, especially since they have various two-piece strap options, and since it has a 20 millimeter lug, you can even choose your own two-piece strap quite easily in terms of something that's going to be able to have this hugging your wrist a little bit closer. Now, in terms of model variants, guys, there are tons of variations to choose from, so you could definitely follow the rabbit hole to that if you want to check the Omega website. In terms of comparable models, the Seamaster 300 has really been the gold standard into luxury divers since Pierce Brosnan's Bond, and has only recently been really rivaled by Tudor divers with in-group movements that are able to undercut them price-wise while still matching specs-wise. Yeah. And some people would even say that Tudor, in terms of brand cachet, are very close because they are, you know, a little brother to Rolex. So, and with Rolex as being less and less attainable, at least at a retail level. I mean, I think production-wise, they're still making tons of them, but, you know, unfortunately, there are some games that are played within that process because their number one, you know, audience are dealers. And I think that's something people forget, is that most watch brands don't sell direct. We have this idea that we're buying from the brands. We're not buying from the brands. Dealers buy from the brands and we buy from the dealers. So there is that separation, which is probably good to a certain extent. And then there's also that level of, you know, when you do have brands that are selling within their own boutiques that are more direct and everything like that, then there is a little bit more to that experience, and you know, again, how it makes you feel is a huge part of a luxury product. And I know some people might say this isn't formal luxury. I think Adrian from Bark and Jack doesn't. Yeah, it's not a luxury product, but it's a luxury brand. And I think that, you know, that's how it is. So for me, guys, bottom line, there's a reason these watches continue to be so highly regarded and recommended. So if you like the aesthetics subjectively, you'll absolutely enjoy all of the objective qualities that have also come along with this piece. And it's, again, at this very popular Swiss luxury diver space. This is definitely still a top choice, even in this trim, which I think, again, it hits a bit of a sweet spot for some and maybe not for others. I think in terms of it being a bit more modern, but also a bit retro, that's great. But I think maybe some folks will be waiting for a future iteration that maybe gets bigger, maybe gets smaller, gets more modern, or gets more vintage looking. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this piece? What are your thoughts on the Seamaster 300 line in general? There are so many different options now. What are your thoughts on that, especially with the big paradigm shift they've done now with their Planet Ocean line? Is that what is coming for the Seamaster 300? I'd say timing-wise, it probably is a good time to freshen things up. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.